and I'm like, you got it.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike King here. This is part of the Mike King Biz Radio Network, ESPN Richmond, International Business Coach Radio, as well as CW Richmond TV. We are here with the Autism Society of Chesapeake, Tidewater. There you go. All righty. Really quickly, ma'am, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Nicole Miller. I am the chapter operations manager for the Autism Society of Tidewater. I'm also a parent of a son with autism, and we run our local affiliate down in the Tidewater area, but we are one of 3 local affiliates in Virginia. We have our Central Virginia Autism Society as well as our Northern Virginia Autism Society. But I'm here today to talk about Autism Acceptance Month because April is Autism Acceptance Month.
All righty. And so, as you know, full disclaimer, disclaimer. I don't know which one of those. I lived at the Faison residence. So shout out to my good friends over there, over at the Faison Apartments. But it is the acceptance month. I got to know folks on the spectrum as people, as opposed to somebody who has a diagnosis. Talk about why that's important.
It is very important to get to know the person behind the diagnosis, because that's not who they are. They are themselves first and foremost. They may have a diagnosis that impacts their ability to socialize, communicate, and to maintain relationships. But in the first, and they deserve a life that is inclusive and that allows you to get to know them as just
as people,
as individuals,
as people.
Yes.
So
we
had talked about your son wanting to come up here. You see when your son's in an comfortable environment, and I tell people, when anybody is in a stressful environment, you see the wheels get wobbly.
Right.
The wheels get wobbly for everybody.
Right, but the regulation is difficult for somebody with autism because they can't pull it back in because they just don't have that skill set because of their diagnosis to immediately go from one extreme to another. There has to be some time for processing and that additional support for them. It's not like you could just turn on a switch,
And that's a big part of it. So you said your son took his first plane ride. He took a plane ride.
Yes, he did.
So, and you said he did great, but it just didn't happen.
So there's a lot of planning that goes involved. The ARC of Virginia has a Wings for Autism program. There's also the TSA
Wait
Care.
a second, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so they do different programs that prepare individuals with all kinds of disabilities for travel. It gets you connected with the TSA Cares program, so you can register in advance as your individual goes through different screenings. It's not like you can just go through the check-in and everything's going to work out just perfectly. There's some unknowns. They have to know what to expect.
So, and that's called the ARC.
Yes, so the ARC.
It used to be a place called the ARC, but now it's SOAR 365. So what is the ARC? What is that?
So the ARC of Virginia and the ARC of the United States, it's a separate nonprofit. They do a lot of great work, advocacy. They do programs like the Wings for All. They do that. They really advocate for all individuals with developmental disabilities.
There's things. So now, shout out to Mary and Bob Lancaster, where Sarah going to Florida on her own. So there's a whole infrastructure in that happening. So you get your son ready to go. There's steps.
Right.
But you said the difference between folks who are diagnosed and other folks, the rest of us, is that we can sort of process things during that time. You say it's harder for them.
Right. There can be a need for additional processing time, especially if you're not an audio processor and you need a visual support, like a checklist. We always go into, so we went into the airport with the checklist, with a social story. I remember the first time.
What's a social story?
So a social story allows the individual to understand how an event will go from start to finish. So it'll have a picture of, where they arrive, like the building. So when we went to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, we got a picture of the security guard, and we were able to see, okay, we're going to see Mr. Al, and this is what he looks like. And then we're going to go to this exhibit and this exhibit. So with the flight, the same thing, this is what the airport looks like. This is the elevator we'll take. These are all the steps. And it's written in like a story format, like you're reading a book. It's wonderful.
There you go, Mom. I hear you. That one is wow. Okay. So I've learned that one. So now, you're here today, Autism Awareness Month, and so you get young parents who are out there just get the diagnosis, whether autism. I know I asked the folks over at Downs as well. Parents get the diagnosis, they think their world just got turned upside down.
Right.
How does Autism Society work there, or a person gets a diagnosis? What should they do?
So we have a program with the Children's Hospital that allows them to refer them directly to us to go over all the resources and information, whether it's local, state, or federal, and really just kind of bring them into the fold and support them. Because I was that parent. I remember what it was like when Alex was two.
Did you know, right? When did you find out that there's an issue?
So when he turned 18 months and lost all of his language. And then it was just like he was hitting, biting, he turned into my little vampire. And was his way of communicating because he was frustrated. He didn't have any verbal language skills. So we had that cliff. We went off that cliff and then we started getting him evaluated and he stopped meeting his milestones. So that's another important thing for folks to know, when they stop meeting those milestones, those developmental milestones, to get them into those neurology, developmental peds, children's hospitals, so that they can get that diagnosis and those early interventions.
So as a parent, when that happens, I imagine that parents really are struggling. The world just crashed on them.
Especially if you're not familiar, like you're familiar because you have
right.
that experience.
But there was a time I didn't know.
Right. So if you don't know, and I didn't know, I worked in public policy, like I didn't have any connection to the disability world 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago. My son taught me all of it. And
you learn as you're going along.
I did. And I remember I was pregnant with my second child at the time too. So that was a whole nother adventure. So a lot of parents feel a lot of fear and shame, like they did something wrong. So we hope to support them and kind of walk them through how they're feeling, how their kid's doing. We want to support the child, of course, but we also want to support the whole family. And it also depends on what culture you come from. We have some individuals who come from a culture that is not acceptable. Any sort of disability is you've done something wrong, you're being punished. And we want to explain to them, it may take time for you to understand that you did nothing wrong. Your child did nothing wrong. We're going to open up a whole new world for you.
So your son's born 18 months, he starts missing milestones. When did you start getting to the point where, okay, I know how to do this now?
So it took me until I got connected with the Autism Society and other organizations where I felt like I had a network of information and to really feel comfortable, and also getting his therapists. We had all these different therapies and I was learning from them. I had to kind of stop everything I was doing, grad school, work.
Right. So we've had a conversation about parents with kids, period.
Right.
Have to fight. Parents with kids with special needs. Oh Lord, you're thumping out there.
Right. It's hard because, especially if you're a working parent, maybe you're even a single parent, you can't always just stop everything. You can't just stop working and do all the things. You got to do what you can do, but try and find a local organization like the Autism Society that can support you when you can get involved in different things. You really got to build a network, because the other moms and dads at the playground may not have a kid with a disability. They're not necessarily going to be that support for you.
No, when they see a kid acting out, that kid is bad.
Right. Take my kid away.
Yeah, and the other one is so one of the cool parts about talking to you is like the missing person with autism alert plan.
Right.
And explain why that's so important.
Absolutely. So a big shout out to Sean and Jamel Hill, who passed away, to allow us to have this missing persons with autism alert for all ages. So it's so important. A lot of our individuals, whether they're children or adults, elope or wander. They'll just take
That's
off.
what people call a runner.
Right.
Uh,
Elopement.
Oh, that's what it is, elopement.
It's called elopement. So there's resources like Project Lifesaver that can
So,
track
okay,
them.
yes, I've seen with the bands.
But the most important thing is if you cannot find them with the tracker, whether it's Project Lifesaver or whatever other device, you need to have the ability to put it on alert community-wide and even statewide, which is what the missing person with autism alert does, because it's put out by the state police. So everybody can put it out like an Amber Alert and say this person's endangered, they're missing, they have autism, be on the lookout. And it really does help because they put it out on the Twitter and the text alerts and all the different, so folks in the community and even outside the community can be alert and find the individual.
So you had said before, if a person's 25,
Right.
they can go and do what they want to do. They're grown, they're an adult.
You're right. And they may have a guardian. So they may have somebody who has guardianship over them because of their developmental disability and their functioning level.
So this helps with that as well.
Right. So whether they are an independent adult or, someone who lacks capacity and has a guardian, regardless, if the police can get all the information they need to issue this alert, this really helps find them.
Okay, so let's talk about folks with autism finding their crew. So you say your son wants to move to the big city.
He does.
But okay, does he light up with so what is it about the big city?
He loves the museums. He loves walking around Starbucks.
The energy.
He loves the coffee, he loves the people. He has ADHD as well, so he paces all day. So he loves a place where he can just walk. Yeah. So yeah, he's fast too. So he enjoys that environment where there's a lot of people around. He doesn't like to be lonely. A lot of our individuals, you think autism, they're closed off, they don't want to socialize. That is the opposite.
No, we learned that living at the Faison apartment complex. No, they found their crew, they found their tribe,
right,
and they're engaging with them.
Interest.
And where we may find that they have issues, they don't.
Right.
Because those are their people. You also talked about you're going to get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from a person on a spectrum. They ain't sugarcoating stuff.
Right. They are honest.
There's no prejudice. There's nothing there. They're just going to give it to you
unfiltered.
All right, Mom. How hard is that at times?
It can be extremely hard because I'll say personally, a lot of it's directed at me. Like, you need to watch your language. You need to do this. There's a lot of things I need to do.
Yeah. That honey-do list is
like, Mom, you're really overweight. You really need to go on a diet. Look at Dad. He's so much slimmer than you.
So when you talk about that as a whole family,
right?
Like whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a health issue, it's a family. It affects a family.
It's a lifestyle.
Talk about like other kids when you have a brother or sister on the spectrum.
So we have great siblings. So I know a big shout out to my friend Ann Flippin, who has a brother on the spectrum. She's a fabulous sibling. My daughter also being a sibling, she is 11. She's 4 years younger than her brother, but she is very much the big sister. She watches out for him. She makes sure he takes his medication. She sometimes even makes his meals for him. She has had to grow up so much faster. And a lot of siblings that have siblings with disabilities, they will often say they grew up really fast. They had a lot
of responsibility.
They call them the glass siblings because sometimes they feel like they see through them.
Oh,
and
really?
They don't get the attention. And that's unfortunate. We want to support our siblings. And I know.
But you're dealing with the one who has, I'm trying to think of the name of the show with a brother and a sister. It was, and he had autism.
Are you talking about Atypical?
Atypical. I love that show.
It's a great show.
I mean, his best friend at his job was just.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. We all need a best friend
like that. Really. And there are times in there where you see dad and he's in the ambulance and
Right,
talking to his partner, and dad, mom going through this stuff. He came without a filter.
right.
Yeah. And he let dad and mom know, but his sister was a cheerleader for him. Then you could see,
And protector.
and that's where you talk about like the glass, because your parents are dealing with the one who there's a lot of needs there.
Focus there, yeah.
Okay, anything? Well, tell it. Now, see, you got me off on some craziness right here. This
Well,
is
I do want to mention the prevalence rate of autism has increased. It just was released about a week and a half ago. It's 1 in every 36 children. It increased from 1 in 44 just at the end of 2021. So now we're 1 in 36. The increase in prevalence, and including a big increase in the Asian and Pacific Islander, Hispanic, and Black communities, also showed a significant increase in autism in all those different communities.
from when 2021.
The end of 2021. So we went from 1 in 44 to 1 in 36, and overall for boys, it's 1 in 25 children.
So you see it more in boys.
So a lot of our girls mask the social deficits. Girls can fake it. They can
They're
mask
smarter
them.
than they're
Well, they socialize in a very different
yes.
way. We've been,
Trained in that.
genetically engineered, so to speak, to socialize and mask. And, I can see what Susie's doing, so I'll just mimic what she's doing. So a lot of our girls get diagnosed later, including my resource coordinator, who didn't get diagnosed until she was 29. She's had autism her whole life, so
She just thought she was, like guys, you may call like he may be a little persnickety.
quirky.
A little quirky, a
Right.
little, it's a little something people just.
Until they reach that autistic burnout. And that burnout is
I
hard.
never heard of that. Okay, what is autistic burnout?
So an autistic burnout is when you have reached the peak of your ability to cope, and everything kind of just comes to a screeching halt. The ability to regulate, to organize your life, your executive functioning skills, it all goes by the wayside. You are just crispy. You are burnt out. But it's on a medical level. So it's not like
It's
you
not
and
like
I
I'm
tired.
sad and that person's depressed. Everybody says I'm depressed.
Are you just tired?
Yeah.
No, it's way more than that. Way more.
And a lot of times the autism burnout are people who are not medicated, they're not diagnosed, they're just going through life.
Right. They haven't received the supports and interventions like my son did at a young age.
Okay, so they're going through life living, they got a job, they got all the stresses and crazy stuff in life.
They're coping.
And then they're not.
Right. Yeah. That's hard. So we want to make sure we have supports for our teens, adults, that, no matter what age they get diagnosed, that they get the support they need, because it's a lifespan.
Does it, when this burnout thing really has me going, is it a slowdown to a grind, or is it just like a boom?
Well, it depends on the individual. Sometimes it's a whoop, you hit the brick wall. Sometimes it's a slow burn. It depends on the functioning level of the individual. So it's kind of individualized. But
all right, ladies and gentlemen, Nicole is here with the Autism Society of Tidewater.
Yes,
and
sir.
so you sort of three: Tidewater, Central Virginia,
and Northern.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And how can people find your information out down that way?
Sure. So you can go to our website at tidewaterasa.org. For Central Virginia, you can go to ascv.org. For Northern Virginia, it's asnv.org.
Alrighty, and so you guys are a nonprofit.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
42 years. That's our 42nd birthday this month.
What is it that you guys, all nonprofits, need help? What is it, some things that how can people help you guys?
Absolutely. So we could always use volunteers. We're always in need of that, human support, and we can always click that donation button. Every donation stays local.
I always say changing the world ain't cheap, easy, or free. Money got to change hands. Yes. Because there's some great things that you guys are doing. Yes, I mean, there's certain things like I'd never heard the burnout part and the elopement. Yeah. That sounds better than a person's a runner.
Right. It's a fancy word.
It is a more, and and the glass, the sibling. Because even no matter a person in your family doesn't even have to have autism. Maybe that person is just needy, and you look by the one who's just doing a thing. They're just they're.
Well, I had a sister who had a mental health disorder, a severe one, and she got a lot of attention. So I had to just be the big sister and do it on my own. So I kind of got the glass sibling thing down as well. I understand what my daughter's going through because I lived it too. So I try to make sure she knows how much I'm there for her and support her and feed into her special interests, just like I do with her
But
brothers.
you know, she's not a typical 11-year-old. She
No,
got smiles on her. She
right.
got some understanding.
She does. And she's gifted too. She's in all the gifted programs. So she's super, super smart. And my son's super smart in his own way, even though he might have that diagnosis of intellectual disability and she doesn't. Cognitively, their numbers don't match up, but they're both very intelligent and they're
They just
very
operate
different.
in their different worlds.
Right. And my husband and I are the same way. We could not be more different.
Yeah,
It takes him like an hour to make a phone call, and I'm like, I've made 15. It's just a different way to communicate.
yeah, I know. I've done 18 things in my life. Like, we're gonna get on with this. You gonna get on at this thing? Well, Mike, that's how you make mistakes. So well, that is that's
You
true.
go fast and you break things, right?
Exactly. And right, so yeah, shout out to Atypical. When we first started watching that show, it turned into one of the best shows I'd ever seen. You see him on the journey, and then whether it's at work and he's getting things, and the whole dating life, the turtles were that was
Yeah, he loves those penguins, right?
yeah.
Yeah, the penguins.
And that was just the whole idea of that program. And having lived in that world, you start to see. So, ma'am, thank you for coming on the
You're
program.
welcome.
On the mic with Mike here. Autism Society are always good friends of the program. Make sure you support them. Autism Awareness Month. One last time, how can people find you out there?
Sure. So again, our website is tidewaterasa.org. Our Central Virginia is ascv.org, and asnv.org is our Northern Virginia
There you
affiliate.
go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On the mic, Mike. Thanks. Now take care.